All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome everyone to this class in the book of Leviticus, chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone. To this class on the book of Leviticus, chapter 16. We're holding by Leviticus chapter 16, verse 8. And hopefully we're going to finish up this verse today. We'll see how far we go. But we're speaking about the Yom Kippur service where there's going to be two goats. One's going to go to Hashem. One's going to go to Azazel, right? Torah tells me, Nasan Aaron, Ashnei Aseirim, Goralos, go Echad Hashem, go Echad Azazel. So the Torah tells me, Aaron places lots upon the two goats, to he goats. One goes to Hashem, one goes to Azazel. So there's no question, this Azazel, that if it's going to Azazel, sounds like idolatry, right? But it can't be, because we know that Azazel is not being sacrificed, right? That goat's going to be thrown off a cliff, right, so to speak, going to go out to the desert, and desert will take care of it, but it's not a sacrifice. Definitely not a sacrifice. The other, the Goro Lashem, that's going to be a sacrifice, right? It's going to be a sin offering. Right, that would be a sin offering. So we brought down from the Ramban and the Rabbeinu B'chai. The Rabbeinu B'chai says as well that it cannot be that we're sacrificing this goat to Azazel. What does that sound like? Idolatry, right? Idolatry forbidden, certainly for Jews, certainly for non-Jews. It can't be that. Whole thing has to be for the sake of Hashem. It has to be for the sake of God. Otherwise, problem with idolatry, right? So we spoke a lot about that. And the Medrash brings down a Medrash. The Rebbe Chaim brings down a Medrash. And the Medrash says, as brought down in Tractate Yuma 41a, it says like this. It says that, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah tells me that Aaron is going to have two lots over here. One he's going to pick is going to be for the sake of Goro Echad Lashem, right? One lot's going to be for the sake of Hashem. Goro Echad Lazazel. And the other is going to be for Azazel. Again, we're going to see more in depth in a second about that. But that animal, again, that goat is not going to be a sacrifice, right? Not going to be a sacrifice. The first sacrifice going to Hashem. That's going to be a korban chatas. It's going to be a sacrifice, a sin offering, so to speak. So here it brings down the Gemara. And the Gemara says, what happens if you don't take lots? Right? In other words, you have two lots. One of them you pick the right one. Whatever it's going to be, that's for the sake of Hashem. And the other one's going to be for the sake of, going out to the desert for Azazel. Now, what happens if you didn't draw lots? So says the Medrash, bring it down from the Talmud. If you didn't give over lots, you didn't take lots over here, you didn't do anything. In other words, it's something that needs to be done. If you didn't do it, you got to go back and do it. Right? Doesn't matter which hand, pick which goat, and whatever. Totally irrelevant. The Torah says you gotta take lots. You don't take lots, the Torah says, oh good. You gotta go back and do it again. Right? You didn't do it right. You didn't do it right over here. So here, the Rebbe B'chai says from the Medrash, if you don't do it right, you don't do lots, no good. No good over here. Then the Rabbeinu Bachai explains from Rashi what's the language of Azazel. Right, so he says it's a hard place. Right, the place is very hard, like the mountains, so to speak. It's in the deserts, a place that's going to be in the deserts, and whatever we're talking about hard stone. So basically, this goat is going to go out and not gonna be pleasant, right? It's going to die, right? You're talking about going to a mountain, going up a cliff or off a cliff, whatever the case is. Now, so he brings down Rashi. He brings down Rashi over here and then brings down another medrash. Now, this is the same thing the Ramban brings down, but we're going to flush it out here. That he brings down a medrash from Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer. Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer, chapter 46. Right, brought down from the Ramban. And he says like this. He says that, therefore, you have to bribe. Who do you have to bribe over here? Who do you have to bribe? The small, the left. Who's the left? Who's considered the left over here? We're going to see talking about the evil inclination. The angel of death, as he's known, Mr. S. You got to bribe him. You got to bribe him over here. Why? Why, says the Medrash, says Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer. You got to give him a bribe on Yom Kippur. Why do you have to give him a bribe? Or how are you going to bribe him over here? Because what do we see? We see one sacrifice. One goat is going to be sacrificed, and the other is not. Right? The other's not going to be sacrificed. So what's going on? Right? Because the Torah tells me, go echad l'Hashem. One goat or one lot, as it's known, is going to go to God. It's going to be a sacrifice. The second goer, where's it going? Where's it going? To the desert. It's going to go out and die in the desert. So the lots that's chosen to Hashem, what's that going to be? What do we understand? Sacrifice. Right? It's going to be a sacrifice over here. And what about the goat for Azazel? All the Jewish people are going to place its sins on this goat. As it says later chapter, in this chapter 16, verse 22. It says that this goat is going to have its sins placed upon it. The sins of what? Sins of the Jewish people. And then that goat's going to die. That goat's going to go out and die. The other one's going to be sacrificed to God. Goat's also going to die, but it's going on the altar. Right? It's a big difference over here. One is going on the altar. One's going out to the desert. Now, what's the shochad over here? What's the bribe? That's what a shochad is, as we'd say in modern Hebrew, according to the Torah. He's giving Mr. S, the evil inclination, angel of death, whatever you want to call him. He's giving him a bribe. Why? What's the status? Let's say better. What's the goal of Mr. S? What's he supposed to do? What's he supposed to do in the world? Cause people to sin. That's what he's supposed to do. Supposed to make everybody sin, right? He's the evil inclination. And he's going to kill people. He's going to take people's lives. But he can only take people's lives. He's a messenger. Remember, he's a messenger. If he's a messenger, he can't do whatever he wants. What's the obvious proof that we don't believe in fallen angels? Some people are going to say, oh, look, according to the Christians, the fallen angel went rogue, right? Mr. S goes rogue, so to speak, and he causes all this havoc, right? He causes all this havoc in the world. So you say, according to the Christians, makes sense. Why? Because you got to blame evil on someone. Because if you look at Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, they got a major problem with that. Because Isaiah chapter 45, 7 says what? It says God created evil. They can't say that. Goes against their outlook. Goes against their agenda. So when in doubt, change the meaning of the words. And that's what they do. They totally change the meaning of the words. Now, people are going to ask the question, the $1.5 million question. What's the $1.5 million question? What? God is evil? No. God created evil. Why did he create evil? Give people free choice. Allow people, God forbid, to tap in, right? Tap into evil. Now, is that what God wants? No. Is it going to be punishment if they do? Sure. God gives people the opportunity to choose good or bad. So if you look at the beginning of the book of Job, what does it tell us? God says, okay, you want to do whatever you want, to my trusted servant over here, Job. Very good. Do what you want, except you're not allowed to kill him. Now, what do I understand? You're not allowed to kill him. God says that you can do what you want over here, but you're limited. Can't take his life unless I tell you. You want to take away his kids? You can do that. You want to hit him financially? You can do that. But you can't take away his life. So what do I see? This angel is limited. Can't do whatever he wants, when he wants. Right? We see also, just throw this out there, Parshas Vayera, the beginning of Parshas Vayera in Genesis. So after circumcision, Abraham's looking for guests. God sends them 3 guests, right? Disguised as Arabs, 3 guests, and they're there to tell him 3 different things, right? These angels dressed up as Arabs over here to tell him 3 different things. Well, one is tell him he's going to have a child with Sarah. Second is that one angel is going to overthrow Sodom. The third is the third angel is going to heal it. Now, what do I understand from that? Very simple. There are 2 things I understand. 2 things I understand. One is God's having a conversation with Avram. And Avram says, okay, God, I got to go because I have these guests at the door. So one thing we understand is that having guests is more important than even speaking to God. That needs to be further explained, right? Maybe we'll deal with that in a little bit, right? But that's one thing, that even if you're talking to God, but you have guests come first. Well, what's the second thing we understand? And that's really the point here, is that each angel can only do one function. Meaning, God sends them on a mission. First angel over here is going to overthrow Sodom. That's his mission. Then when he gets back upstairs, he finishes his mission. God will tell him what to do next. Second angel tells Avram that he's going to have a child. Then after that, his mission's finished. He'll get another mission. And then the third one, right, that's going to heal him, same thing. So what do I understand? An angel has one job. He's given one command. In other words, he can't multitask. Whatever the angel's supposed to do, that's what he's supposed to do. Can he go out of his nature? No. Can't go rogue. Can't do whatever he wants. The Ramchal in Derech Hashem states that clear. Angels do not have free will. They don't have free. They have power. 100% they have power, but they can't go outside their own power. Meaning, if an angel is in charge of the wind, says, okay, I want to make a hurricane, 150,000 miles an hour, destroy all, this neighborhood. I can't stand this neighborhood, whatever. God can say yay or nay. If God says nay, it's not going to happen, right? If the wind, in the ocean decide get together, have an earthquake, they wanted to make a tsunami, destroy half of Southeast Asia, put Atlas back on the map. No pun intended. God can say yay or nay. God can say, okay, if I want it to happen, it will. If I don't want it to happen, it won't happen. So these objects, these inanimate objects over here, whether it's the wind, stars, the moon, anything, they don't have power in and of themselves. They can't do whatever they want. Now, Pharaoh, others made the mistake. And they said, well, God's so lofty, God's so powerful. Why in the world would he want to deal with man? Why in the world do we want to deal with this world? So we always say we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. Grew up in a small town, in a city, in a state, in a country, on a continent, right? On a planet, we're getting smaller. In a galaxy, we're getting smaller. So you're going to say, come on, God's busy with black holes. God's busy keeping the earth on its axis the way it is. That it shouldn't go too close to the sun, otherwise we'd be incinerated. Shouldn't go too far back, we'd be like Pluto, that frozen tundra, even though Pluto got demoted as a planet, right? No offense to any Pluto lovers out there. But if the sun went back, let's say better, if the earth went back a little bit from the sun, so we'd be a frozen tundra, 100% a frozen tundra. So that being the case, we wouldn't be here. So God keeps everything in motion. right? So people are going to say, but he's so lofty, he's so busy, dealing with black holes, all these other things. Why is he going to deal with man? Why is he going to deal with this creation, of man and deal with this world? He's got plenty of things to deal with this world, right? He took care of nature. He let nature run its course, right? The way he set it up. And he let other things. He let other things take over, right? And he's beyond that. So what would they be saying? They're saying these things have power. God is the one who wields the power. God's really the ultimate one who's in charge over here. You know what? He's still busy. So they'll do whatever they do, and it's fine by him, right? And, he'll intervene when he has to intervene, but in general, he leaves it for them because he's too lost. Now, there are a lot of problems, a lot of philosophical problems, with such a thing, right? With such an idea. One of them is that if we understand there's a creator, that means he has a connection to his creation. Someone who built a building, a huge building, whatever it is, it's not like all of a sudden they finish building and they disappear, right? That's not going to happen. They're going to have a connection to such a thing. The Rambam brings down as one of the 13 principles of faith, God knows the thoughts of men. God has the ability to punish, right? There's reward and punishment. God is unique. God is absolute. If he's absolute, he has no needs. But if he's absolute, that means everything else under him is subordinate to him. That means they don't have individual power. They can't have individual power. Because if they have individual power, that means God's not in control. And that can't be. Because God is not lacking anything. Also, it's kind of problematic if we say that God's the one who runs the world, and God's in charge and he has no needs. So why would he, even if he created the world, where'd he disappear to? Up behind that rock. Boom! Like, where is he? Where do you put an omnipresent being? The whole world is his. The whole universe is his. So where did he disappear to? Where did he hide over here? All right, a big philosophical question, right? But the simple answer is God has no needs, right? If he's got no needs, then he can't be lacking in anything. If he leaves something over to have power, even though he's in control, he ultimately is in control. But that means that these other things can go around him, or they can do what they want. That's not true. Because he's the one that not only wields the power, he's in charge. So therefore, as Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, it brings down the way of God, talks about spiritual forces, right? Main point over here is angels can't do what they want. They're messengers. 100% they're messengers. Can't go outside what they're programmed to do. No different than animals, right? In a different way. Animals, what do they have? What level soul do they have? The level of soul they have is the animalistic side. That's it. Everybody has an animalistic side to them. We all have an animalistic side. They don't have the other parts. So if they don't have the other parts, you're going to tell me, or someone's going to say, come on, animals can choose. They want to eat. They don't want to eat. This, that. Okay, does that mean they have free will? Doesn't mean they have free will. They're programmed DNA. Just like in the physical world, you got animals, plants, other things, totally programmed. Can't go outside their nature in general, right? In general, that's the case. There have been times where, that has not been the case. I'll give an example in a second. But in general, they don't go out of their nature. They cannot go out of their nature. They are programmed. Now, it used to be the Beis HaLevi. Beis HaLevi, Rav Chaim Brisker's father, blessed memory, was a Torah giant 150, 200 years ago. And the Beis HaLevi in his commentary in Chumash says like this. He says that when man acted in the world, way back when, before the time of the flood, man, their actions were perceived by animals. In other words, animals could learn from man's actions. Now you're going to say, how is that? Animals are programmed DNA, true, right? But at a certain point, man had power over them that animals can see what man does and imitate what man does. Now, I'll give an example. Sorry, not my example. Beis Halevi asked the question. By the generation of the floods, the animals get destroyed, except the fish. Right? The animals get destroyed except the ones that came into the ark in order to keep their species alive. Why the rest of the animals? Why the rest of the animals get destroyed? Because of the intermingled species. Now, how is that possible? How could we'll keep this clean. How could a chicken go up to a duck, right? Or a dog to a cow? I don't know, whatever it is. Seems impossible biology. Or, animal biology 101. Normally that shouldn't be able to happen. They shouldn't want to intermingle, with other species. So how could that be? How could they go way outside their nature here? Because they learned from man. They learned the actions from man. They saw what man did, so they imitated. Because man had that kind of power, and had that kind of force over creation, where animals had the ability to imitate man. So you're going to say today that's not really the case, right? Because you tell me things have changed. Animals today, and it's very rare, if at all, where animals are going to interbreed with a different species, right? Not going to happen. But there was a case many years ago, right? I remember reading this many years ago. There was a case where a certain type of bird, the males were trying to mate with each other, right? It was unheard of, should never happen, right? It doesn't make logical sense or biological sense, right? But where was it? Just anyone who wants to know, just happened to be in San Francisco, right? One of the biggest gay capitals in the world. So now you want to tell me, well, that's not normal for two males, to want to interact, same species, not different species. You're right. It's not normal. Shouldn't happen. Right? You tell me by the time of the floods, not only was that more common, but they even went further. Right? They went further by trying to intermingle with other species. That makes no sense. Right? That's much harder to understand. To try and intermingle with the same sex species, that I could hear. That I could hear somewhat. But a number of years ago, there was such a case. Right? They're going to say, well, did anything change? Again, it's probably, that's an anomaly. It's not very common, and it shouldn't happen. 100% shouldn't happen, right? Not normal. Is that going to mean other species, in San Francisco, same sex are going to try to, intermingle among themselves? Maybe. I haven't seen too many articles over the years about it. I saw this article about it. Doesn't mean necessarily it can't happen, but it's improbable, right? Statistically, it should be about zero. It shouldn't happen, right? So you see that man can have that kind of influence over animals, right? As I understand, again, by the time of the flood. Tell me after the flood, it's hard to understand. All right, so angels don't have free will, right? We've established that. So what's going on over here? So what's Mr. S? Why are we bribing? Why are we bribing Mr. S over here? Because comes along the evil inclination, the angel of death, whatever you want to call him. We'll call him Mr. S. He's got a problem because what's his job? His job is to take people out of this world and to make them sin. That's his job. To convince us to go according to our evil inclination. That's his job. But what about on Yom Kippur? Do we have an evil inclination on Yom Kippur? We're like angels on Yom Kippur. It says Mr. S in front of God himself. He says, Ribono Olamim. He says, God, master of the world, you have a people in the land that are like angels. They're like angels in heaven. Just like angels in heaven, right? They don't have legs, so to speak. Or they're not walking on legs. So too, the Jewish people. What does that mean? What does that mean? Is to say that the majority of the day, they're not sitting, the Jewish people on Yom Kippur, in the outer courtyards. What are they doing? They're standing, right? They're standing most of the day. So too, like angels, they don't eat or they don't drink. On Yom Kippur too, Jewish people don't eat or drink. So too, the angels, right? They don't sort of jump around, so to speak. So too the Jewish people stand on one foot, right? Like when you say the Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it, it's like you're standing with your feet together, right? They have all these things in common with angels, and angels over here. Then he says, just like angels are clean from sin, so too Jewish people clean from sin on Yom Kippur. So what does God do? What does God do on Yom Kippur? Jews are in synagogue, and they feel like a piece of dirt, and they're saying vidui, they're confessing all their sins, right? And God's going to accept give them atonement. Obviously, if they've repented enough, they've done tshuva enough. So what does God do? What does God do? So it says the Medrash over here. Says the Medrash over here. The God hears the testimony of the Jewish people, and even though Mr. S is going to come up with all these things, all these claims, against the Jewish people, all they've sinned and all that, but what does he do? Comes Yom Kippur, Mr. S doesn't have a tongue to speak. He doesn't have the ability to speak, and God is going to atone. He's going to atone to the Beis HaMikdash, through the temple itself, to the altar that the sacrifice goes on, and through the Kohanim, through the high priests, in that are going to sacrifice over here and get atonement, right, from the high priest over here. And he's going to get atonement for the entire Jewish people. How do I know? Because it says later, chapter 16, verse 33, that the temple, the Mikdash, is going to atone. The Ohel, the tent of meeting, the Ohel is going to atone. The altar is going to atone. And the Kohanim that are bringing the sacrifice going to atone for the Jewish people. So comes along the Medrash over here, the name of the Pirkei of the Rebbe Eliezer. Right, it says the name of the Pirkei of the Rebbe Eliezer, that Mr. S doesn't have a claim here. He doesn't have a claim. You got to throw him a bone. You got to throw him a proverbial bone over here. Why? Because the Jewish people are not going to, God's not going to listen to his testimony, whatever Mr. S is going to say. Because look what the Jewish people are doing. They're doing tshuva. They're repenting. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is doing vidui, is doing confession, right? Confession for himself, for his house, for the sake of the Jewish people, and they're getting atonement. Tremendous. So Mr. S out of luck. Mr. S got a complaint. Got a total complaint over here. Right? So Mr. S has to be placated. How are you going to placate him? Because one sacrifice is what? It's going on the altar. The other sacrifice going out in the deserts. It's not being sacrificed, it's going to be devoured, fall off a cliff, whatever the case is, given over to demons and whatever. So you gotta placate. You gotta placate Mr. S over here. Because if you don't placate him, he's gonna have claims, so we can't give him a claim. So comes on the Pirkei of the Rebbe Eliezer, it's fine. We'll placate him. Because he's got a good claim. I can't do anything over here. Right? You took me out of the picture over here. Power of Yom Kippur. Power of the high priest. So I got to give him something over here. Right? So explains Pirkei of the Rebbe Eliezer. So then he goes this whole thing. About what the exact language over here is. It says you should not sacrifice. Where is that? Right? There's the whole thing over here that one is Azazel is not being sacrificed. So the question how you read it. Does it mean Shalom, Lamed Aleph, that it will not be sacrificed? Or itself is going to go out to the desert? Shin Lamed Vav. No question. No question what the correct version is. Is it with an Aleph at the end or is it with a Vav? Right? Now, says the Rabbeinu B'chai over here, he says, regardless of how it's written, whether it's written with an Aleph, whether it's written with a Vav, He says, Lo yadati perusha. I don't understand. I don't understand what it means either way. Because in either case, if I say it's not being sacrificed, that's seemingly not true because I have another sacrifice, right? I have the first animal being sacrificed. If you're telling me it's his sacrifice, it's really not. So either case, says the Rabbeinu B'chai, doesn't make sense, right? Either way, you're going to learn it out, over here. So what is the answer? So he says, what does the word kufreish beis mean? The word karev literally means to draw close. Lahakriv is a causative form. The causative form means we translate it as to give a sacrifice. But literally it means to draw close. Now, anyone's going to ask, we spoke about this at the very beginning of all these classes in the book of Leviticus. When you give a sacrifice, right? People think it's medieval. People think it's archaic. People think, the temple's going to be rebuilt. If the temple's going to be rebuilt, there's got to be sacrifices. People say, come on, right? That's insane, right? Absolutely insane. How can that be? That's medieval. It's archaic. You fill in the adjective, whatever it is. But what does the word kufreish beis mean? Give a little bit of Hebrew grammar here, right? Or I shouldn't say grammar, right? But what does the word mean? It means to draw close. Now, today's day and age, if you would see an animal, you would see an animal be killed. First of all the PETA pet activists, whatever you want to call them, right? In America, all these leftists going to say, can't do that to the animal. That's our ba'achaim. That's causing animal pain, suffering. Problem is, what does the Torah tell me? Torah tells me, right, throughout the book of Leviticus, aren't there sacrifices you have to bring? There's a sin offering, right? There are free will offerings. All kinds of offerings. All kinds. There's a burnt offering, right? Doesn't get eaten by anybody. Gets put on the altar. There are many, many different types of sacrifices over here. So obviously, God says, "I desire these sacrifices. This is what I want." Now the problem is we don't have a temple today, so we can't do it. But even if we say Israel's in our hands now, and the Temple Mount's in our hands now, ain't no one bringing sacrifices. That's not going to happen, right? Not going to happen for a number of reasons. Most of them political, right? People every year try and I don't know where they hide the sheep. Try and hide a sheep or try and bring the sheep up to sacrifice before Passover. It ain't getting by the police. And if it does get by the police, the Arabs are going to stop them straight away. They're not going to allow it, right? Certainly not going to allow it. So there are political issues. There are purity and impurity issues as well. No Jew is allowed to go up to the Temple Mount because they're not sure exactly where the Holy of Holies are. There are some rabbinical authorities, I'll throw this out there. There are some rabbinical authorities who hold, they know where to go, they know where to step, so they hold it's permissible. Problem is, if you get it wrong, you get spiritually cut off. So the vast majority, let's repeat that, the vast majority of rabbinical authorities today, Orthodox rabbinical authorities today hold a Jew cannot go in the Temple Mount. Can't go up there. Again, someone will say, but there are rabbis say it's okay. Fine, right? We have a clear-cut majority here. Clear-cut majority. But there are other issues I don't really want to go into, right? But there are other issues. One other issue I'll just mention. I don't want to focus on this. And that is that if you go up there, remember many years ago, Ariel Sharon went up there to show we have sovereignty over the Temple Mount. Nobody disagrees. We have to ram it down the Arabs' throats. For them to know what we believe in the Temple Mount. They know. But what happened? What happened to them? That was a provocation. By that being a provocation, what do? They rioted. There are all kinds of terrorist attacks, different things, because somebody went up there wanting to show it belongs to us. Now, some people make the claim, if we don't go to certain areas and the Arabs take over, it's not right. It belongs to us, blah, blah, blah. So we have a right. And we have a right to show it belongs to us. Now, what's the problem? I don't disagree with that. That's true. That may very well be true. What's the problem? The problem is, even if I would agree, which I don't, But even if I would agree that a Jew would be allowed to go on the Temple Mount, what is that going to do? What damage is that going to cause? The Arabs are going to go absolutely nuts. Now, you have to understand one thing, that, even though, for them, not the most holy place for them, regardless, they hold it's a religious thing. If they hold it's a religious thing, they'll fight to the death of every last one of them, right? In other words, for them, you're making it into a religious issue. So you're going to say, but anywhere I step outside the old city of Jerusalem, isn't it true that they believe it belongs to them? True, right? The new city of Jerusalem outside the old city, they're going to say that's occupied territory, right? And all that area, all around it and, different places, they're going to say it belongs to them. So what are we going to do? So what are we going to show over here? And some people will say, we have to go up there to show, even if it would be permissible, to show it belongs to us, i.e. to ram it down their throats so they understand. But they're going to make war. If I walk downtown Jerusalem, not necessarily going to make war. I mean, they may attack here, attack there, different things. Sometimes things will flare up for no reason, seemingly no reason, but you do something like that in their face, that's a whole different thing. And a person who does such a thing, there's such a question. Just throw this out there. There's such a question. A person like that who does that, it's called a rodef, maybe. What's a rodef? A pursuer. What's the normal case of a rodef? We would say, if a woman is pregnant, the child, is causing danger to the mother. The child has the status of a rodef. So you kill the child, you save the mother. Why? Because we go according to potential right now, not future potential. Right? So the child is called a pursuer. Pinchas, when he shish kebabs, he takes a spear and he kills Cosby Batsur, right, the head of the tribe, and Zimri, right, the head of the tribe of Shimon. He's also considered a rodef. Right? But what did he do? He didn't just take a spear and kill them. First, he went to Moshe Rabbeinu. So everybody says he's a vigilante. But what did he do? He asked Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the halacha? What do you do if two people are doing this, that, and the other thing? Keep this clean. If they're doing that, what's the halacha? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't answer. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot. So Pinchas said, I remember the halacha, and he did it. And he killed him. Now, had Zimri killed him, he would have deserved it. Why? He had the status of a rodef. He's a pursuer. Someone comes to kill you, you kill him first, right? If you can't stop him in other ways. That's what you do. Pinchas over here was saved by unbelievable miracles, the Gemara says. Many, many miracles, the Talmud says, right? But if he would have been killed, did Zimri do anything wrong? No. Would anyone else have done anything wrong? No. But that was the punishment, right? And that's what he did, right? That's what Zimri did. So somebody who goes up the Temple Mount and says, we have a right to this land, right? We have a right to this area. And even though the Arabs know that and we know that, but you ram it down their throat, and then they start to attack. And then they start, God forbid, shooting attacks, bombing attacks, other things. Whose head is that on? It's on the person who went up. But the person's going to claim, we have a right to it. I don't disagree. I disagree that you're not allowed to go up there. Right? Sorry, I would agree that you're not allowed to go up there. Right? I would also agree, if we don't go to certain areas, then, the Arabs are going to just squat there and no Jew's going to be able to live there. Some of the most holy areas, in Israel, happen to have tremendous presence of Arabs. Give one example. What's the second holiest city outside of Jerusalem? Second holiest city outside of Jerusalem is Hebron. How many Jews live in Hebron? I don't know, 10,000, maybe less. How many Arabs are there? About 1 million? There's an army presence there. There wouldn't be an army presence there wouldn't be any Jews left. It'd be massacred. You talk about Bethlehem, it's all Arabs. Jews can't go there. That's where Rachel Imenu, right? Rachel, that's where she's buried, outside there. I mean, thank God we can get there. Right? But you walk downtown Bethlehem, you ain't coming out alive, most likely. So you have a lot of areas. You have where Joseph's buried, have problems there. people want to go and pray at his gravesite. You have to go with a tremendous army presence. Otherwise you get attacked, get shot at. Right? It boggles the mind. You have these areas. We have many, many tens of thousands of Arabs there, no Jews. We're not going to get political. The point is that even if I would agree that we have rights to these areas, and when the Messiah comes, Jerusalem's going to be much bigger, much, much bigger. Parts of Syria be taken over, parts of Iran taken over, right? Parts of Baghdad, Iraq are part of all greater Israel. We'll get it eventually. They're not going to be now, but eventually that's all going to be part of Israel. It's part of the borders. But these other areas, I would agree, they belong to us. The Arabs know they belong to us. Everybody knows. It's not, we're not saying anything no one knows over here. And it's pretty darn clear. But now you go and ram it down their throat, especially something that they're going to say it's a religious thing, then they're going to make it into a war. And if they make it into a war, and God forbid, Jews start dying because of this, the person who went up there, again, even if I would hold it's permissible, you're starting a war. That's what you're doing. Now, someone could say, if I walk down other places, in Jerusalem and other areas, they think it belongs to them, they can also attack. Yeah, but they're not going to. Not like this. This is like right in their face. Right? Even if they hold it's the third, most holy place or whatever it is, that area, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They're holding it's a religious thing. When they're holding it's a religious thing, you're not going to ram it down their throat. And so some people would say, person who goes up there showing that it belongs to us, that's a problem. That person may have the status of a rodef. As a pursuer, it will have Jewish blood on their hands. Right? I don't want to dwell on that. That's, that's the whole topic. That's the whole topic in and of itself. Right? So over here, the word, so getting back to the word sacrifice. So the word sacrifice over here, the word karev means really sacrifice, right? To draw close. So when a person brings a sacrifice, I'll give an example. Let's say a person did a sin. God forbid they have to take an animal, have to come up to Jerusalem. Animal costs money. It's time to get there. So they give it to the Kohen. They give this animal to the Kohen. And the Kohen does this, does this whole service, so to speak, sacrifice the animal on their behalf. Now imagine you're looking at this animal. This animal should have been you because you sinned. The sin was egregious. You got to bring the sacrifice. So the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna, more than 250 years ago, at the end of his life, one of the things he wanted to see was what someone looked like before and after giving the sacrifice. Why? Because he said it cannot be. It cannot be according to nature. Someone who brings an animal and that animal is going to be sacrificed. How can that person be the same before and after? Can't be. Because even though the person sinned for whatever reason, and now he's going to bring the sin offering, when that person sees the animal flailing, right, blood going all over the place, we're going to keep this clean, right, blood all over the place, the animal gets cut up, that should have been him. So again, all the leftists out there are going to say, come on, what does animal do to deserve this? And the answer is because God said so. God said that's what you do. If there be a temple standing, you bring the sacrifice. Did the animal do anything wrong? No, but it sanctifies the animal, right? Sanctifies the animal, sanctifies the blood of the animal, all these things, whatever the sacrifice is. So it's a tremendous thing. So says the Vilna Gaon, how can it be? Someone who witnesses such a thing, they can be the same person afterwards. So I remember when I was in South America, when I was in Chile, I went to help someone, in slaughtering of animals. So I had a certain job there, whatever it was. So one animal, I said, I want to see from beginning to end what happens. From the beginning, from the animal slaughtered till they cut them up and they salted and all that. Thank God it didn't make me a vegetarian. that's what I can say. But, as I saw the animal being brought in, I tried to imagine, this animal would be a sin offering from me. And then when you see what happens and you see the animal die and you realize that could have been you, how can it be, says the Vilna Gaon, that the person will be the same? How can you look at life the same way? So I have a very simple answer, right? In other words, yeah, you could be scared out of your wits. You could imagine that's you and all that and play it in your mind. How long is it going to stay fresh in your mind that you're not going to go back to doing the same stupid things you're doing before? Same sins, different day. How are you going to get over the fact of doing things by rote? But look what happened. Tremendous epiphany. You have an unbelievable spiritual experience because you realize that, again, I'm bringing it down to this world. This animal should have been you. You should have been there sitting on the altar like this, cut up, right? Whatever it is. That should have been you. Says the Vilna Gaon. How can it be? How can it be you're going to think the same thing? You're going to do the same thing again. Maybe you'll think twice, you'll think 3 times before you do it. But he said you can't be the same person. That's why, one possible reason why the Torah uses that language. Because when a person brings that sacrifice again, it's not about the animal suffering and nothing to do with the animal suffering. In the countries that say we're not allowed to do ritual slaughter, they say because cruelty to animals. Yeah, how does an animal die according to ritual slaughter? You take an extremely sharp knife, unbelievably sharp knife, right? And what do? What do? You get the neck by where the trachea and the windpipe is together, and you take the knife and you go in, you try and make a clean cut, the animal dies straight away. It might flail for a second, but it's going to die straight away. Now, the $1.5 million question is, how is that cruel? Where's the cruelty over here? So in Switzerland, many years ago, and there are certain countries that will not allow ritual slaughter. Well, Switzerland said, okay, you want to ritually slaughter? We'll allow you on condition. What's the condition? You have to stun the animal first. Now, that's not cruel. You're taking an electric shock. They don't have much juice to give it not to kill the animal. You're giving it an electric shock. Imagine they juice this animal up a little bit, and all of a sudden it's going, zzz. That's not cruel. Right? So the 3-day age, Rabbi Chil Weinberg, of blessed memory, wrote a huge response on this topic. And basically what he found out was no matter how much juice you give this animal, it could make the animal into a treifa. What's a treifa? A treifa means, let's say an animal's missing a certain limb, or let's say an internal organ, it's missing or it gets severed. The animal's not going to live for more than 12 months, right? So what he found was after inspecting the animal, after it was zapped, he found out that there were certain internal organs that were burnt. Well, it wasn't a question they gave it too much and it killed it. That wasn't the issue. Whatever amount of juice they gave it, they saw internal organs, some internal organs, were destroyed. Totally destroyed. That makes it into a treifa. So says the 3-day age, says Rabbi Chil Weinberg, of blessed memory, guess what? We can't do this. Why can't we do it? Because most likely we're going to make it into a treifa. Most likely we're going to render it unfit. So you can't do it. But again, they're going to make the excuse and say that, well, what we do is cruel. So thinking about that as well. So when we're finished, after a long day, so, as we're getting ready to leave, I want to see how the non-Jews do it. Now, I'm not going to say this is typical of all slaughterhouses. I'm just going to tell you what I saw. And you heard these poor animals bellowing, and they're hacking at the animal to kill it. I'm not going to go into detail. That was the utmost in cruelty. Here by Jews, they take this, really razor sharp knife. Animal dies, split second. Split second, the animal dies. Here, the animal's bellowing. They're hacking this animal to death till it dies. Why is that not cruel? Because anti-Semitism does, and I'm not going to go into this, anti-Semitism doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be logical. For sure, it doesn't have to be logical. Because if you're going to tell me it's what we do, quote unquote, is cruel, what about what non-Jews do? That's not cruel. That doesn't matter. By them, we permit it. You want to do it our way, says the Swiss. You want to do what we do? Great. You got to stun the animal first. I don't know, stunning anything. I don't know. I can't even imagine how that's not cruel. And again, you're not giving enough juice. You're killing it. I understand. But who says you're not frying his brain? Could have made a hole in his brain for that matter. They had an issue with that and other things. But you see the animal getting fried, so to speak, even if he's not dying. Well, that's not cruel. Seems pretty cruel to me. But you see, anti-Semitism does not have to be logical. 100% does not have to be logical. And we know it's not logical because you see what the Jewish anti-Semites say, what the non-Jewish anti-Semites say. They say all the same thing. They'll say, Jews have all the money. Oh, what about in a place where they don't have money? They'll say the Jews do this. In other words, whatever the reason is in one place, it may not apply somewhere else. And if it doesn't apply somewhere else, then that can't be the reason. So there are contradictions left and right. So what's the reason for anti-Semitism? So what do the great commentators say? Because Esav hates Yaakov. That's it. Esav hates Yaakov. You're going to say, well, what Yaakov did, he tricked him twice. But see, when does anti-Semitism end? So some people would say, if you had a lot more Noahides in the world, so to speak, then anti-Semitism will disappear. So Kaufman would say it's not going to disappear, 100%. It'll be less because they understand how the world works. They understand who the God of Israel is. So there'll be less anti-Semitism. True. But Esav hates Yaakov means it's not going to end till the Messiah comes. Anti-Semitism will never end till that comes. So I've heard some people say, I don't think they're going to say it today, but some people will say, there'll be a lot more Jewish unity in the world if there's more anti-Semitism. We don't need more anti-Semitism. Plenty out there. Plenty out there. But there's a story, I'll just relate this story, that in the parsha speaks about Esav and Yaakov, Reb Yerucham Levovitz, a blessed memory. He was the Mashkiach in Mir Yeshiva. He was the spiritual mentor in the Mir Yeshiva. And he tells the following story. The story happened to him. An amazing story. He tells the story, he's walking down the street. And two non-Jewish kids are playing ball. One kid throws the ball over the kid's head. So it came right to Rebbe Yerucham. So he bent down to pick it up, to give it to the child. Now you're talking, I don't know, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. I don't think much older than that. So he gives the ball back to the child. Right? He bends down, picks up the ball, gives it to the child, and the child smacks him and runs off. Child smacks him in the face. The non-Jewish kid smacks him in the face. So Rabbi Yerucham asked the following question. He said, where did the child learn how to do this? He's going to smack an old Jew in the face? Kid's 4 years old, 5 years old. He says, that's what it means, Esav hates Yaakov. That's what it means. In other words, no rhyme or reason to the air. It's part of the air. I'll tell you further. Rav Chaim Brisker, a blessed memory. So even one of the Torah giants more than 20 years ago, right? One of the Torah giants in Brisk, he was the Rav of Brisk. And he made the following statement. He said, why is it if I walk down the street, and he's exemplifying what this means that Esav hates Yaakov. He says, what is stopping a non-Jew from coming over and pummeling me, punching me, kicking me, hitting me? Don't we understand Esav hates Yaakov? So why doesn't it happen on a regular basis? Why doesn't it happen more often? Not that we're asking for it, but he's asking the question, why isn't that more often? It should happen a lot more often because it's in the air. You know what his answer was? It's a remarkable answer. His answer was, really, it should happen all the time because that's just how powerful it is. You know why it doesn't happen? Because they're lazy. Because if not, they'll sit there and pummel me. Someone's going to say, come on, is that saying negative things against non-Jews? Let's understand. What does it mean that Esav hates Yaakov? That means the non-Jewish world hates the Jewish world. And if one Jew does something wrong, all Jews get blamed for any reason. Doesn't matter. Secular, religious. If it's a religious Jew, it makes it worse. Spoke about this last week, my Q&A. Not going to go more into it, but the point is, But the point is, we do something wrong, we try and be more like them, they're going to hate us more, right? I'll tell you Medrash. When the Torah was given to Mount Sinai, what does the word Sinai mean? The word Sinai means, in the vernacular, the word Sinai means hatred. That's what it means. It means to hate. So the rabbis learn over here that when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, it brought hatred to the Jewish people. What do you mean it brought hatred to the Jewish people? How did it bring hatred to the Jewish people? Why should it bring hatred to the Jewish people? Didn't the non-Jews have an opportunity to keep Torah mitzvahs? Didn't God, the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, to 3a, God goes to all the nations. God goes to, the example given, God goes to Edom. Who's Edom? Esav. Goes to Esav, says, you want the Torah? What does Esav say? What's written in it? God says, not allowed to kill. But Esav says, what the Torah says about me, that I have to live by the swords. No, I'm not interested. God goes to Yishmael, goes to the Muslims, says, you want the Torah? They say, what's written in it? Says, don't steal. Says, don't steal. Doesn't the Torah say I'm a wild man? My hand's in the hand of everyone. Everyone is in the hand of me. So basically, what's my nature? Be a thief. No, I'm not interested. Goes to all the nations. All the nations reject Torah. Come on, the Jewish people. God says, you want to know what's written in the Torah? They say, Na'aseh v'nishma. They say, we will do, then we will hear. God, you got a track record. We're not interested. Whatever the Torah says, we're going to do. So how can it be? How can it be? God gives the Torah to the Jewish people, and he brought hatred to the world. That the non-Jews hate us because we got the Torah. The Koppen would say, you want the Torah, you can join. You could have joined up until the very least, up until God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai. You still had an opportunity to join. 100% you could have joined. So what happened? You didn't want. For whatever reason. So I had someone once tell me, if my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, if I would have been in that generation, I would have rejected the Torah. So you know my answer was? I don't care what you would have done. Nobody cares what you would have done or not. You weren't there. So if you weren't there, you got to go through conversion. That's it. Right? You want to be part of the Jewish people? Fine. You don't want to be part of the Jewish people? It's also fine. You can be a Noahide, no problem. You can still eat shrimp. Right? No issues over here. Be a lot easier life in many ways. But if that's the case, what are you complaining about? Right? What are you complaining about over here? So why is there hatred? Right? Why is there hatred? So what's the simple explanation? Simple explanation, I would say, is, imagine somebody has something. You weren't interested in it. You had no interest in it, whatever it was. So someone has something, and now you say, wow, that looks really good. Now I want it. Too late. You can't have it. Nah. You can't have it. It's not yours. I bought it. It could be something not so significant. It could be something insignificant. But a person desires it. They want it. We say, too bad. Too bad. You can't have it. So that makes it more desirable. Now that I can't have it. If someone were to say, it's like I heard Rebbe, blessed memory, once say, if I put in my book and I say, Ayin Sham, look over there, look at this source that I just brought. No one's going to look at it, right? But if I say, whatever you do, don't look over there, then everyone's going to look, right? In other words, it's already after the fact. It's after the fact, somebody has something, and now you say, wow, I lost out. I could have had it. Now you're jealous. But okay, it's too late, right? It's too late over here. That's why I say non-Jews want to keep Shabbos. If they're not a JIT, not a Jew in training, right? They want to keep Shabbos. Not exactly like a Jew, okay. But there's certain things that they want to do that really should be forbidden. So I would say, doesn't the Torah tell me? It's a sign between God and the Jewish people. So I think, personally, it's the ultimate in chutzpah. Why? Because someone's going to come along and say, but I want to be part of it. I want to be a super Noahide. and I want to keep more than that's given to me because I'm not happy, but I can't convert, or I don't want to convert, whatever the case is. So I'm going to say, okay, too bad. Sure, tough luck. You can't move. Your spouse doesn't want to convert, whatever, whatever it is. But now you're going to give me a hard time. And you're going to say, but I want to do more, right? I want to do a lot more. Forget it. You had a chance. Great grandparents' generation. You had a chance. So if you want to convert, I can't, okay? But I'm mad because I want the best of both worlds. You can't have the best of both worlds. Why can't you have the best of both worlds? Because that's making it up into a religion. That's going against the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. Can't have both, right? Doesn't work that way, right? The Rambam states clear, make it up into a religion, you're out. Whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, Hinduism, any other so-called religion. You cannot go and debunk, quote unquote, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. You can't go against what he says. So therefore, if you can't go against what he says, that's making up in a religion. So here I want to do things. I'm not making up in a religion per se, right? That's what they're going to claim. But essentially you are, because you're doing things you're not allowed to, that are really forbidden, right? So if you do that, that's making up in a religion. So that you're not allowed to do. 100% you're not allowed to do. So on that note, you cannot straddle both worlds. I do understand by Noahites is not so much ritual. There are no holidays per se. There are certain things they can do, to commemorate, let's say, a festival, certain things, right? But certainly not the same as a Jew, no question. There is some leeway, but in general, you can't make up in a religion. That's forbidden. And there are plenty of people out there, God forbid, doing that. So either you're going to stick to a Noahide, whatever Noahides have to do. And if you don't know what that is and you're not sure, so every week we do a Noahide class for Noahide nations, working our way through, right? Working our way through the Noahide laws. People will be shocked. Certain things that they might be allowed to do, but certain things they're not allowed to do. And I mentioned many times, you got to be very careful. Because if you're going to straddle both worlds, you get neither of any, neither of each. You're not going to get this world, certainly not the next. Because that, you're going to make it up. You're going to make up a new religion. So you can't do that. That's forbidden. Right? That's forbidden. Now, based on that introduction, so what it means sacrifice over here? Or that you're not going to sacrifice. Right? Does it mean sacrifice? Kind of hard to say that, because it's really not a sacrifice. So said the Rabbeinu Chaye, whatever version you're going to tell me, whether there's an aleph at the end of it, there's a vav at the end of it, he says, neither makes sense. He says, neither makes sense. Right? He says, I don't understand what it means. So he says, what does it mean? He says like this. He says, let me find it here. What does he say? He says like this. What does it mean? Yikarev, right? We translate it as he's going to draw close or he's going to sacrifice. What does it mean? It says karev milchama. What is milchama? War. What does war have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? So he says that this sacrifice you're going to bring, right? What does Azazel mean? What do we say before? We said before in the name of Rashi, right? He brought down Rashi over here, talking about a harsh mountain, a cut land, right? Something hard, a high cliff, right? Well, what's he saying over here? Saying over here, what's it talking about? A war? What's it talking about? Drawing close and war, so to speak. That what is this whole thing? It's not a sacrifice, right? Because you're putting it out in the desert. It's going to go off this cliff, or whatever the case is. So what does it mean? It means something that is bad, something that is evil. And we really speak about the good of the Jewish people, right? In other words, who does this represent? He's going to bring, according to Kabbalah, I'm not going to go too much into this, right? But he says But he says based on that, they're talking about a certain force, right? You're talking about a certain force over here. According to Kabbalah, it could be talking about a certain angel over here. According to Kabbalah, he's talking about a certain force, power of this force, which is the evil inclination, which person has two sides, right? You have the good inclination, you got the evil inclination, right? So here, see here as it's brought down, come on, Baba Basra 16a. Who is Mr. S? He's the evil inclination. He's the angel of death. He's the angel of death. So he goes to this whole thing. According to Kabbalah. One thing he says is that you got to be careful over here because Mr. S has the power to kill. Person has to be aware. Now, he can't take someone's life, we mentioned before, unless God allows him to, right? But he does have power, right? He does have that power to do and to get people to sin, right? That's what he's supposed to be doing in this world. And, we have to be careful. Now, one thing that we mentioned before, one thing is that you can bribe it, right? He's someone who can be bribed. So it says over here that he can be blinded. A person who takes the bribe can be blinded, right? As it's brought down, book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 19. It says the person who takes a bribe can be blinded. So he can be bribed over here. Because here he's got a claim. What's his claim? His claim is that, I don't have any power over here. You took away my power on Yom Kippur. I can't get the Jews to sin over here. So you got to appease him, right? You got to appease him, so to speak. And then, then he goes this whole other thing, trying to explain according to Kabbalah certain things which we're not going to get to. So the Rebbeinu B'chai, he brings down from the Ramban, as we mentioned, and you got to keep in mind what's going on over here, right? And we have to remember, first of all, giving a lot over here. If you don't do that, then you have to go and do it again. But we have to make clear that what a person is not doing is that they're sacrificing, quote unquote, to Azazel. That is idolatry. That everyone would agree. Everyone would agree that it's idolatry. That would be idolatry, and that's forbidden. So I just want to finish up this verse here. Comes along, Moiv Rebbe, Rav go to Moshe Moshlita, should be well. Brings down in Tam V'das, his commentary on Chumash. And he brings down the Ramban, and he says there are two goats. There are two goats that are equal. One is going to go to God, so to speak. One is going to Azazel, right? This goat's gonna be thrown off the cliff. Again, we're not worshiping it, etc. So the Rebbe here says that God is going to choose. God is going to choose which goat he's going to take and which goat is going for the sake of Azazel. So the question is, okay, one is going to God. The other is going to the desert, to the one in charge of the desert, right? One of these demons or whatever is in charge of the desert. So that's true. If that's true, then I got a problem over here, right? the Jewish people are not sanctifying this Azazel over here. He's gonna die. There's gonna be atonement over here, but really it comes from God over here. So, well, what's the point? What's the point of saying the dead is gonna go off a cliff, or it's gonna appease Mr. S by these spiritual forces? The dead are gonna take this goat. What's going on? Once the God and once this other spiritual force, let's say. Again, it's not idolatry, right? It's going out, it's not being sacrificed. So what's going on? So says Mori Rebbe, what's going on over here? There are two powerful forces in the world. One is the power of impurity. One is the power of holiness. And really, one offsets the other. I can have the power of impurity offset the power of holiness. So really, they're equal. They're just polar opposites. So once, let's say, there's a lot of holiness in the world. So if there's a lot of holiness in the world, what does God do? He gives more power to the power of impurity because that's to offset. To the evil inclination, because the evil inclination and the good inclination are essentially equal. You tell me one wants to go in one direction, one wants to go in the other direction. True? But essentially, there are two powers fighting against each other within a person. So he says, both forces are both working as God's messengers. So again, the Christians over here are going to go absolutely nuts. Why are they going to go nuts? They're going to go nuts to say, what do you mean? That comes from God? How can that come from God? If God is all good, you need an opposite of him. So you need evil. So that's where you get a fallen angel. But evil, who brought evil to the world? God brought evil to the world. Again, does that mean God is evil? No. God's certainly not evil over here. But he allows the power of evil to people to tap in. He allows people to tap in. So if there's too much holiness in the world, he's got to placate the attribute of impurity. So he can make the impurity get stronger. Right, let's say. But what's the problem? Probably going to say, well, that emanates from God. But God's not evil. Right? He's got to placate the other side. So really, the goal is to take this side and make it go towards good. Right? In other words, what does goodness want? What does the Yetzer HaTov want? The Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination, wants a person to do the right thing. Wants it to perform mitzvahs. Wants it to speak words of Torah. Wants it not to speak Lashon Hara, blah, blah, blah. But what does the other side of him want? The other side wants just the opposite. Wants evil. Wants to go according to what the body wants. What the body needs, so to speak. So a person knows, as my Rebbe here continues, a person knows there are two ways. Two ways a person can go. You can either go towards God, towards Hashem, or you can go the other way. You can go towards Mr. S. That's your choice. And you're standing in the middle. Right? So imagine you're standing in the middle. We'll give an example. Take Lot. Right? Lot makes a choice. He's fighting with Abraham. He can make a choice. He could go with Abraham, go to the side of good, or he sees the bright lights of Vegas, of Sodom. And he says, what am I going to choose? So he's standing there in the middle. I could choose good. I could go with my uncle, who represents all goodness, or I could go to Sin City. And he thinks for a split second, he says, I'm going to Sin City. And that's where he ends up. And he goes to Sodom. So are we any different? So we're no different. We're standing in the middle. We have a choice. We're at a crossroads. We could go to the right or we could go to the left. We go to the right, it's about holiness. It's about taking a step in the right direction. No pun intended. Right? Or I could take a step in the left direction. Left direction, no great shakes. worse, going to go in the wrong direction. So you have a choice. You have a choice over here. So the Rebbe says you got both sides. He stand in the middle, right? If he wants to choose the right side, the good side, he goes to the side of good. If he wants to go according to his evil inclination, he goes to the other side. But you got to make sure you don't stumble over here, because what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal, as Ramchal says, we have a struggle till the day we die. The struggle is between good and evil. We struggle on a regular basis. So that being the case, if I choose to do good, I'm going to sanctify the body and the soul. If, God forbid, you choose to do bad, you debase the body, you debase the soul. So the Rebbe here says, you want to make the right choice. You want to go in the right path. And even though, let's say you make the right choice, it doesn't mean you destroy the evil inclination. Nonetheless, you want to push it off. You want to push off the evil inclination, to go to the desert. Just like we take the Azazel, you push them off to the desert, right? When are we going to be able to kill the evil inclination? To totally destroy it, that's only when the Messiah comes. So we do understand, everyone would agree, we're living in Messianic times. That, I don't think anyone's going to disagree. 100%, we're living in Messianic times. So if that's true, the evil inclination knows, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the evil inclination knows on its last legs. It's on its last legs. So he's going to do everything in his power to bring the world way down. Right? But he's only got a certain amount of time left. Because the Gemara says, when the Messiah comes, what happens? The angel of death, he's got no power anymore. His ability to get people to sin, they're not going to sin whoever survives. We're only going to be doing the will of God. Right? The angel of death gets slaughtered. So Rebbe here says, well, we're not at that point yet. We're close, but we're not at that point. So even though he says we're not able to slaughter the evil inclination, we're not able to get rid of it 100%. So what do? We push it to the side. We push it away. Now, does that mean the evil inclination not going to come back? Oh, he'll come back. He'll come back. He doesn't give up. He's got a lot of patience. All he needs a person to do, is he wants to draw a wedge inside a person just a little bit. And even if it takes a long time for it to get worse and worse and worse, so fine. He's got plenty of patience. He got plenty of patience over here. What all he has to do is drive in the wedge. That's what he's got to do. So you don't push him off totally. You don't totally destroy him. You push him off. And what's going to push him off more? Torah. The more Torah we learn, the more it's going to push him off. But we have to be careful. He's saying you have to be careful over here. Right? Very simply, the evil inclination can create havoc, create all kinds of terrible things. But see, you need a balance. You need a balance between good and evil. So that's one of the reasons that, here in Israel, it's quote unquote a land of extremes. Why do I say a land of extremes? Because there's a heck of a lot of Torah being learned. No question, at a very high level. No question about it. At the same time, all you have to do is go to Tel Aviv, it's king of the gays, right? It's a huge, huge population, gay lesbians. Right? It's kind of like the Mecca in a certain way. So I always say when Jews do the right thing, they go all the way up. They go all the way up. Do the wrong thing, they go all the way to the ground. So you need that. You need both, because one offsets the other. Why is it there's such a fight between ultra Orthodox Jews and the left? What does the left essentially want? What does the left want? They want to be like everybody else. It just happens they live in Israel. They were born Jewish, whatever the case is. They want to be like everyone else. Do everything, whatever they can. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything to them. Now, the Orthodox are their conscious. They're saying you can't do this. We don't want you to desecrate Shabbos. We don't want Israel to be like every other place. God forbid. So what we want Israel to be a cut above, doing God's will in God's backyard. That's what we want. We want God's presence to return, to the land of Israel, to the Jewish people, to the world. There are a lot of things we're missing over here. The secular Jews who hate Torah mitzvahs. You think they feel like they're missing anything? Yeah, they don't want to feel guilty. 100%, they don't want to feel guilty. So they'll do whatever they can in order to drag us down. That's the whole thing, and we're not gonna get into this, but that's the whole thing with ultra-Orthodox Jews doing the army. Because what are they going to claim? We want you to share the burden. And people say, why do my kids have to, risk their lives and all that? You have to share the burden. But they also make clear, there are religious units in the army, but they want you to integrate and be like them. That's what they want. They don't want to hear about kashrus. They don't want to hear about time to learn. They don't want to hear about anything religious. They want to do what they want to do. So their goal, bringing quote unquote ultra-Orthodox Jews into the army, what's their goal? Their goal is to make them like them. Now, they'll say not that way. They'll say we just want you to share the burden, fighting a war or whatever. But if there's, if it's a war that everyone has to go, right? The prophet will tell you got to go. Everyone goes. But in the time of King David, there was a standing army, right? You still had a standing army. You need people to pray also, right? That's going to be the success. But without going into all that, their goal is to make us like them. That's their goal. They've said that explicit many, many times. They want us to be like them. They'll hide it under the guise of share the burden. But the reality is share the burden means you be like us. Right? And being like us means forget about being religious. That's what it means. That's what they want. They'll say, well, you want to be religious, do what you want. We're not going to stop you. Yeah, it can make life pretty hard. Right? The army is a very hard place to be religious. Right? Even, they do have religious units today. So 100%, it's easier. It's certainly easier than it used to be, right? I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's any question about that. But even so, there are a lot of things that go on that's, absolutely horrific. Should never go on, right? Should absolutely never go on. But they're gonna hide under the guise of saying you got to share the burden, right? That's what they're gonna say. Not 100%. They're going to say. So that's just a way. That's just a way of getting to us. In other words, I'll tell you what happened at the very beginning because I heard this. I saw it with my own eyes. There was someone who was in a religious unit. It was at the very beginning of these religious units, and this person went AWOL. He ran away from the army. And what happened? He said, "Kim Shabbos." They brought, first of all, it's forbidden to do this anyway, but they bring all these girls, all these women, to the army base where all these guys are on Shabbos. Not only do they do it on Shabbos, they bring them, they're singing, they're this, they're that. So, the person came from the base and said, it went AWOL for that reason. Now, probably a lot better than it used to be. But what do you think is going on over here? We're not living in Victorian England. I don't think there's any question. There's no question. But, at the same time, they're in the army, and I had this argument with someone, not that I want to go much further than this, but someone's in the army. Is behind me for Shabbos, someone I used to go to yeshiva with, and he tells me the following. If it wasn't for me in the army, Syria would come and invade. right? So we understand there's a need for the army. Even time of King David, we understand. Right? So I said, oh, I want to see how long it took you to become a heretic. So this guy is shocked. What do you mean? I keep Shabbos, I keep Kasher, I keep, this and that. I said, do you believe in the power of Torah? Talmud Torah Keneged Kula. There's nothing more important than learning Torah. Would you agree with that statement? Yes. Do you believe that the power of Torah can save, people praying can save people in the army? This is where it gets a little bit fuzzy, right? So, then he says, but you still need people in the army. But what was his claim? His claim was, had other religious Jews been in the army where he was, it would have made his life easier. Okay. That might be true. But when someone says that the power of people sitting and learning, and without that, if I had more people in the army, it would be better. But that's saying you don't believe in the power of Torah. Because it's not about numbers. Totally not about numbers. And we see from all the wars, all the Israeli wars are absolutely miraculous. There's no question. And the fact that Israel's still here today is pretty miraculous. We just saw it from the last thing by Gaza. Our Rebbe pointed out a number of times. They shot 1,000 missiles. 200 missiles backfired. Killed their own people in their own place. What are the odds? It's 20%. It's 20%. Right? That's unheard of. You tell me a couple happens, couple misfires, 5, 10, whatever. 200? Forget all the missiles got knocked down by the Patriot missiles. Another issue. Another thing. Right? But 200 missiles misfire and kill your own people? Now, it's one or two options. You only got one or two options over here. Either you got the absolute stupidest people shooting the missiles. That could be true. That might be true. Or there's something else going on, something supernatural going on. Because that's not normal. Totally not normal. Right? Statistically, a person can take out their watch, take out their calculator, whatever it is, and try and figure out what the odds of that. The odds are pretty darn slim. Not only that, the other missiles got through. They hit open areas. Some of these places that they're aiming for are not that far away. Couple miles, 5 kilometers away. Can't hit anything. Not a light post. Not a building. Not anything. You're hitting open areas. These missiles supposedly are supposed to be unbelievably accurate. So you see what goes on, in the land of Israel. Miracles left and right. Got to be careful saying it's a miracle, because if you acknowledge it's a miracle, then we have, it has to affect us. It has to change us. But even so, when a person hears such a thing, 200 missiles backfire, that's pretty big impossibility. That should never, ever happen. Not that high number. Certainly not. A handful of times I can understand. A handful of times I'll cut you some slack. But you're going to tell me 20%? That's unheard of. So they're going to say, what, do you think God's doing it? You got a better explanation? What's the other explanation? Chance? You can't say chance over here. The chances of that are zero, right? Someone once tried to figure out, in the Gulf War, 39 Scud missiles, they hit nothing. All open areas. Now, if I would have bet all the money I don't have, and I would have bet that wouldn't have happened, I would have been a millionaire, billionaire. You're going to tell me 39 missiles hit nothing. Nothing! Open areas. The odds are 0.00. Never going to happen. If I were to tell you 100% of the time, or even 90% of the time I'm playing roulette, and red 13 comes up 90% of the time, I'm going to be a rich person. 90% of the time, right? So if I would play the odds, that they're going to take a missile and it's going to hit something, you would think the odds are pretty good it's going to hit something. If you're going to tell me that 0% of the time it's going to hit something, come on, I take a bet like that. No problem. It's called a sucker bet. Not a problem. I bet all the money I don't have. Never going to happen. What do you see? Miraculous. You know, it has nothing to do with Patriot missiles hitting these rockets. Nothing. The ones that made it through hit nothing. And the others backfired. You know, it's not the might of the Israeli army. That has nothing to do with the Israeli army over here. Again, you don't have too many options. We said either you got the stupidest person shooting the missiles, could be. That's a possibility. Or something supernatural. Nothing else makes any sense. I mean, and if you try and say anything else, you're grasping at straws. Right? So the point was, someone tells me they're in the army, quote unquote, religious. You need me to be in the army, otherwise we'd be on our knees and Syria would come and invade. That's heresy. That 100% is heresy. I'll tell you what someone else told me earlier. It's good. You know, like I said, I never like to get into politics, but I do want to mention, you know, while I'm on this topic, I do want to mention one other thing. 1 second here. Let me see. Let me just bring it up. You know, I can't say I was actually shocked, but nothing seems to shock me that much. But what did the person over here say? 1 second. Whatever. It was a whole, you know, it was a whole political thing here that let me just see if I find it here. Of course, when you're looking for it in front of your face, it doesn't show up. Someone here whatever, got a discussion earlier. Earlier, and this person, whatever, was mentioning, asked me where I'm located. Anyway, I told him where I'm located. And he's telling me all the terrible things going on in Israel, which is true. Got about, you know, it's mentioned about Reform conversions now being permitted here, even though I mentioned they were permitted anyway, right? Someone had a Reform conversion, they want to come to Israel. They're allowed to come to Israel based on the law of return, right? Or conservative conversion, you know, and then basically saying Israel, you know, because of this last government, Israel losing its Jewish character. I agree, right? That's why, thank God, this government got knocked off. You know, you got secular Israelis deciding Jewish law, right? The whole thing's a joke. I agree. Now, what was this question? Without getting too much into politics, what was this question? Well, what are the ultra-Orthodox Jews doing about it? You know, what are the Sephardim doing about it? Shas, you know, Aguda, what are they doing? You got someone here, he's telling me, you know, he's the one really fighting for a true Israel. So when people desecrate Shabbos, there aren't people who make protests. There are people that make protests. When they desecrate bones, there aren't people making protests. They make protests, right? And they're doing things behind the scenes, whatever it is, you know, whatever it is. And, you know, the claim that, okay, it's going to be the end of Israel as a Jewish state, which I disagree, you know, depending how far it goes, obviously. Jews being attacked daily, yeah, that's not an, you know, it doesn't matter. You could have a right-wing government saying, you know, not any different, you know. And he's telling me a certain person getting, you know, potentially get 400% increase from the last election. All right, I'm not, you know, I used to be, you know, a lot more interested in Israeli politics, right? So basically, you know, I said I don't waste my time too much with politics. Now, what did the person answer? Right? What did the person answer? So the person answered, you know, you got to do something to make a change. It's pikuach nefesh. What's pikuach nefesh? I let people, you know, throw around certain terms. Pikuach nefesh means I can do anything to save a life. I can even desecrate Shabbos to save a life. In other words, that's how far we're going. That's how far we're going. Do whatever it takes to stop it. Now, I agree. I would agree that, hopefully you get the right people in power, which is, no guarantee. So you try and work from within. That's why I have religious parties, right? You try and work from within to get these things stopped, keep the status quo. But again, I don't think the right is that much better, in many ways. And if they had their way, they'd throw us out also. No question, right? So person says, but pikuach nefesh. It's like saving life. Again, the question how much we can do. We'll make protests when we need to. Desecration of Shabbos, different things. We'll protest. We'll say you can't do this. Well, discovering the bones, they want to put a road over it. We'll make a huge stink about it. We have to do our part. There are two things over here. You need people politically active, true, right? That I'm not going to deny. You need people who are politically active. You need people sitting and learning. Now, the bottom line is, if we would sit and learn and do what we're supposed to do, there wouldn't be any problems over here. You tell me, we mentioned before, the evil inclination is on its last legs, right? So you need to, and if there's going to be a war of Gog and Magog, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to be a lot of destruction. The prophets tell us it's all true. That's all true, but we can sweeten the judgment a little bit. Because the prophet says a third of the world, are going to get destroyed. One shot. A third are going to survive, a third are going to be wounded. See how many of them survive. It's going to take 8 months just to bury the bodies. It's not a nuclear war. That's how bad it is. So the claim is, Hashem wants us to do our parts. So learn most of the things. So the quote is, learn most of the time, just act when needed. Does that, does that mean it's because nefesh? Does that mean I have to go now, stop learning or whatever? And if I was young enough, go do the army because it's a milchemes mitzvah. It's a mitzvah right now. And there's a prophet and he's telling me we have to go to war. No such thing. They don't even need us in the army anymore. For years, you got so many of these non-Jewish Russians. You got plenty of them in the army. They don't need us. But that's not even the issue. That's not even the issue. You want to pray? Good. You want to learn? Good. But do what you're supposed to do. Right? Sounds like someone way too political. And forgetting that God runs the world. You need people in the army. I'm not saying not. But you know what? When you have 8, 9, 10, 20, you're surrounded by all these savages. That's what they are. They're savages. And you're surrounded by savages. And now instead of being 100,000 against one, it's going to be 100,000. You put, so many people in the army, it's 100,000 against 3 or 10. The odds are, God forbid, you're still going to lose. You're still going to lose and get slaughtered. But you need people to learn. You need people to sit and pray. So this person tell me that's not enough. This is pikuach nefesh. Go out and fight. That's when it's a milchemes mitzvah. That's when it's an obligatory war. We have a prophet. The prophet says, even if you're first married, within the first year, you go out to fight. Everybody goes. That's when it's a war. That's when it's a war. And the prophet tells you, you got to go out. That's an obligatory war. If it's not an obligatory war, this is not an obligatory war, right? But you're going to tell me, we got to fight. We got to fight these people, true. So you need to stay in the army, true. That means I gotta batter people and do all kinds of things to try and, stop desecration of Shabbos. I do what I can, right? We do what we can. Yeah, but you're not going to take everyone out of the base medrash, right? That's lunacy. You're not going to take the entire Jewish nation learning in Israel, students and all over. You're going to take them out of the base medrash. You're going to take them out to study all the day. No, that's more important than pikuach nefesh. Are you a prophet? Is there prophecy today, you moron? There's no prophecy today. None. You know what the prophets are today? Says the Gemara, you know what the prophets are? Little kids are imbeciles. Those are the prophets today. We don't have prophecy. So you can tell me I'm delinquent in my responsibility because I'm learning. Forget I'm too old, doesn't matter, right? But people are learning. Everybody should go. Oh, it's saving lives. Saving lives, stop reform conversions. And what about the waste of time? Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. There's nothing more important than learning Torah. What does the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos say? What does it say in Ethics of Our Fathers? The world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, Gimel Chesed. What's the first thing it stands on? Torah. Then either prayer or the Beis HaMikdash, giving sacrifices. And what's the third thing? Doing chesed, doing acts of love and kindness. But let's go to the first thing. If people aren't learning Torah, the world goes back to the original chaos. Chapter 1, verse 2, book of Genesis. Kind of like that back in the Led Zeppelin album. Anyone knows what I'm talking about? Right? It's chaos. Also, fine, you have people learning. We need people out there picketing. We should be out there picketing the Knesset. Bunch of dimwits. What are you doing with reform conversions? Yeah, people have screamed. People have jumped up and down. 100%. But we have to take the majority. We have to take the majority out of learning in order to picket these dimwits. For what? You have to protest sometimes. I agree. My Rebbe's very big into that. Doesn't happen all that often. So when it happens and you have to go out to protest, you go. But you want to tell me we're in such a state of pikuach nefesh and we'll do whatever it takes? We got to be picketing. So everyone should be picketing. Forget, the month of Elul. It's coming up. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, introspection. Oh no, we got to be picketing these stupid politicians. These heretics got to sit there picketing. Really? Come on. We got to bolster the more people to sit and learn, and fix time to learn. That's what we got to do. And we got to stop sinning. That's a better idea. Imagine if most of the Jewish people stopped sinning, what the world would look like. You think we have a problem with the Arabs? Forget it. We'd never have a problem with them. We'd be singing Kumbaya. We'd be playing our drums, playing our guitars, singing Kumbaya. Everything would be great. The lamb's going to sit with the sheep. Everything's beautiful. The Messiah's going to come. Oh no, can't do that. Can't be introspective. Can't learn Musar. What are we going to do? We're going to picket the Knesset. That make any logical sense? No, it's pikuach nefesh. We're saving lives. We got to save our own lives by learning Torah. That's what we got to do. And if there was a prophet, the prophet would come out and say, guess what? We have to go to war. So be it. So we'll go to war. That's a milchemes mitzvah. That's the mitzvah to go to war. Do we have a mitzvah to go to war today? Is there any prophet telling me I have to go to war? No. We don't have prophets today. So you're going to say, should I have a standing army? Didn't say that. You need a standing army. 100% you need a standing army. But if you don't have people learning and praying, the standing army is sitting ducks. And with all the technology and all the nuclear weapons and all the weapons that they have, ain't going to do diddly squats against the enemy. What's gonna work hard against the enemy? Torah, mitzvahs. That's gonna have the power. That combined with having an army and having a strong army, that'll help. But having strong armies, is that a guarantee? No. Look at Israeli history, right? People should relearn history. Look at the miracles that happened. For goodness sakes, throughout all the wars. You think they should have won the 6-day war? When the Egyptians retreated? Miraculous. They were preparing for tens of thousands of Jews to die. They had body bags left and right. They survived all these things miraculously. And it wasn't necessarily the might of the army. But you also had people praying. You had people learning. That's the biggest force we have. I'm not saying you don't need guns. I'm not saying you don't need missiles. Yeah, it's a miracle this place exists. And even after 2,000 years, still a big miracle that we're still here. Right? There's a medrash. There's a medrash in Tehillim, in Psalms, that says that when the Messiah comes, we're not going to be here. We're going to be in the desert. Now, the question is, do we take that literally or figuratively? Right? Is that the same thing? Is that the same thing or not? The whole question. Right? The whole question. But according to some, we're not going to be here. So I remember I was taking my Rebbe somewhere. He was telling me this medrash. So he had this big smile. I'm like, what are you laughing at? I said, if your Messiah comes, you're also going to be in the desert. I'm like, what are you laughing at? So some say it's literal that, yeah, we're not going to be here. Hard to imagine. Right? At least the way things are now. Very hard to imagine. But I could say that, you put a leftist government in here, they'll give everything away. They'll make it so indefensible we'll have to leave. Could that happen? Could happen. Look at what this other government want to do. And you're relying on a majority with a bunch of Arabs that hate you. Crazy, right? We're not going to get political here. The point is, we're living in miraculous times, right? The fact that this country exists is a miracle. It's a miracle. It's not about the guns. It's not about the missiles, not about nuclear weapons, right? All those are good deterrents. All those are good deterrents. And even if you look at the Ibrahim Accords, and everything else, you really think people in Dubai love Jews? Come on, let's call a spade a spade. Yeah, they're open relationships now. A lot of Israelis going to Dubai, people from Dubai coming here, and other places and whatever. Very good. Very good. But what's behind it? Come on, what's behind it? We have a common enemy. You know who the common enemy is? Iran. You think the Saudis, and people in Dubai, you think they have a good standing army? Forget it. Iran's going to come flatten them like a pancake. Totally flatten like a pancake. You think the Kuwaitis loved America and America went in to save them from, weapons of mass destruction? No, they were going to take over 70% of the oil. Can't have that. That would be worse than what it is today. People complaining, paying $3 a gallon. How high would be that here? Paying a lot more than that, and that's where the oil comes from. But I digress. What's the whole point? The whole point is we're living in miraculous times. Yeah, it's good to have a standing army. It's good they stop terrorist attacks, but why is it? Why? How does it happen? It's because God allows it to happen. It's because God wants our prayers. He wants us to learn. He wants us to be strong. That's going to defend the army and the Jewish people more than anything else. But if a person thinks the power of my hand, that's what we said in last week's parsha. It's the power of my hand that did this. Yeah, the power of my hand. Still, the Israeli government patting each other on the back for how they destroyed Hamas, right? What they did in the last war. The last flare-up, let's say. It wasn't a war. Last flare-up, right? And they say, look at our power. Look at our Patriot missiles. Okay, very good. 95%. Pretty accurate. Okay. Yeah, what about the other missiles that backfired? What about the fact the other missiles that got through? That didn't do any damage. They ended up in open field. How to explain that? It's the power of the Israeli army. It had nothing to do with the Israeli army. Very potent in this week's parsha. Last week's parsha that we read. It's the power of my hand. You're forgetting. God says you're forgetting. Who do you think is in charge here? You think you're in charge? Come on. I made the whole medical establishment look really stupid by corona, by one little microbe. Here I got missiles of total destruction here that can destruct, cause all kinds of damage. You want to tell me it's the power of your hand, and it's the power of our brains, and it's the power of our might, the holy Israeli army. That is making 200 missiles 20% backfire in their own place. That's how foolish it gets. So now you're going to say, I have an exile mentality. You're going to sit there and pray and do nothing. I didn't say do nothing. When it's our time to fight, we'll fight. If it's that type of war. If it's not that type of war, different issue. You need people to sit and learn. Now, this person will make the claim. He didn't, but I'm sure he's going to make the claim. You don't need everyone sitting and learning. You don't need tens of thousands of people sitting and learning, right? Just like the secular Jews here say, right? We'll take 1,000. We'll take 10,000 top students. Everyone else do the army, be regular people, right? Live in this world, quote unquote. Now, what's the problem? What's the problem? So we come from an orphan generation. We lost a lot of Torah giants in the last generation. Lost the whole generation. So we're trying to build that generation up, but they want us to be like them. So this Jew or Jew wannabe, whoever he is, right, is telling me, come on, you got to be out there. You got to be picketing the Knesset. What are you worried about these old books for? It's time to learn. It's time to learn. It's time to fight. It's time to fight. I don't know anyone telling me it's time to fight now. It's not that type of war. If it would be that type of war, everybody goes to war. Everybody goes to fight, no question about it. It's not that type of war. You need a standing army. But what about people sitting and learning? So this same person, guarantee, I'll bet all the money I don't have, guarantee 100%. What's he going to say? You don't need all the people sitting and learning. Boy, look how many people sitting and learning. How many people sitting and learning over the age of 25, full time? From 9 in the morning till 8 at night. How many people over the age of 25? How many guys you got in the mirror? A couple thousand, 3,000, 4,000. Panovich, another 2,000, 3,000. And outside of Israel, say another 2,000, 3,000, maybe 10,000. You'd be lucky, right? I'm telling you, it's lucky if it's 10,000. Over the age of 25, sitting and learning, full time. Now, I'll give you a bonus. I'm in such a good mood now. I'll give you a bonus. I'll say it's 50,000. 50,000, let's say over the age of 25, sitting and learning full time. It's a joke. But I'll give you 50,000 because I'm in a generous mood. How many Jews live in the world? Last calculation, 14.5 million, give or take. Do the math. What's 50,000 divided by 14.5 million? It's about 0.01. It's not even 0.5%. So people are claiming, look at all the religious people sitting and learning. Look at all the numbers. It's not even 0.5%. If it's not even 0.5%, you know what I would say? Kaufman would say, we got to post to people, more people to sit and learn. Got to raise more money to get people to sit and learn. You're telling me, look at all the tens of thousands, millions of people. It's 0.01%. Where are your numbers? What are you going to tell me? 0.01% is too much. We gotta be busy picketing the Knesset for the small percentage of the people sitting and learning full time. That's what we got to do. Take people out of yeshiva, right? We'll take teenagers. We'll let them picket. They won't, they're too young to go in the army anyway. So let them do something for real. Again, I don't think this person's going that far, but I don't think it's that big of a jump because I've heard plenty of other people say it, right? And go that far. I wouldn't put it past this person to say it, but okay. So that's more important than sitting and learning? Is there anything more important than sitting and learning? No, because if you say there's something more important, then you're a heretic. There are times when I'm sitting and learning and, something comes up and it's pikuach nefesh, right? And it's saving a life. You do whatever you can. You stop learning. If a person's learning and a bride and groom walk by, in the 7 days he's supposed to make them happy, stop learning, start dancing in front of them. There are certain mitzvahs, push away sitting and learning. And what if you're learning on Purim? Do I have an obligation to hear the Megillah? What's more important? Right? Hearing the Megillah or learning Torah? Right? The Gemara asks the question. You got to stop learning. 100%. You got to stop learning because of the miracle of what happened on Purim. So there are times you stop learning, true. 100% I would agree. But if you're going to tell me I'm going to stop learning so I can picket the Knesset, do me a favor. That's not being an exile. Jews say, no, Torah is more important than anything else. That's what the rabbis tell us. That's what it says in Pirkei Avos. It says all over the Talmud, for goodness sakes. How do you disagree with the basic premise? You don't know. Or you've never learned, or you're a fool. Either way. But you don't make such a brass statement that, if you don't do this, look what they're going to do. They're going to walk all over. So I would agree. The best thing that happens was that government fell. True. Because these people are going to make it 10 times worse. Do I think the other government, if there's going to be another government, might be a stalemate, could be another stalemate. Do I think a right-wing government is any better? No, I don't think they're any better. They lean a little bit more towards being a little more traditional, even though they're not, because their religious party is going to join with them. And they want to keep the status quo good. But if not, and you're running into the left, what does the left want? The left wants you to be like them or worse. That's what they want, right? So my Rebbe would say, you wanted to draft us, and you're telling me there are too many people sitting and learning this and that. We're not going to give you one. We're not going to give you any, right? That's how it is. That's how it is. So someone makes such a statement. I understand they're more into politics than that. Okay. But see, politics and Torah don't normally mix. You might have to get involved because it'd be a lot worse if you didn't have religious politicians. True? Right? It'd be a heck of a lot worse here in Israel. Very true. That I would agree. But at the same time, how much am I going out of the way for that than I am sitting and learning? So you can have a balance, obviously. The person will say, fine. But if it's pikuach nefesh, if it's saving a life, you don't want these, people here setting up their own rabbinical courts and doing conversion on their own, making a travesty of a mockery of a sham, as Kaufman would say. So yeah, that's bad. Right? So we're going to pray more. We're going to learn more. We're going to do what we can to try and, protest and show how we don't like it and blah, blah. True. Right? That's what some of the religious parties have done. Nothing less than that. Okay. That means we have to, I have to stop learning, do it. That's how far it goes. Depends what it is. Depends what type of pikuach nefesh it is. And about saving a life. Right? That's the question how far it goes. But, okay, there are flare-ups here, there are flare-ups there, different things. So I got to start picketing the Knesset and stop learning. Take everyone out of the yeshiva, make a mass protest. Okay, some say it won't do anything anyway. Whatever the case is, how far do you take it? I don't know how far this person is willing to go. I can guess. I could be wrong. The person said, come on, he's taking whatever I said out of context. That's not what I meant. People should sit and learn whatever. But this is pikuach nefesh is different. So how far do you take it? So I'm taking it to another degree. Maybe this person's not going that far, but I tend to doubt it. Because I've heard people like this talk a dime a dozen. Right? A dime a dozen. So they're going to say what you're doing doesn't have value. That is heresy. Because learning Torah has value. It has a lot of value. It upholds the world. And the less people learning makes it harder in the world for Jews, for ultra-Orthodox Jews. Makes it harder. So we need to boast to the masses. We need to find more times to learn. We have to be focused. True. That's 100% true. Right? We can't be lazy over here. And we're certainly not going to take people out of the study hall to go picket City Hall. Unless it's absolutely necessary. This isn't absolutely necessary. We do what we can. We protest when we can. Okay. Right? But what does my Rebbe say more than that? You got to be strong in your learning. You got to be strong in your emunah Hashem. You got to learn Musar. You got to learn a lot of ethics. You got to work hard on yourself, change bad character traits. And a little bit of Torah. And a little bit of Musar pushes away a lot of darkness. But we have to be consistent. We can't be running around these different causes and forget what our purpose is. Our purpose is to be a light into nations. Our purpose is to sit and learn as much as we can, whenever we can. And that's going to bring the light of Torah. It's not about picketing City Hall. That's not what it is. That's 100% a waste of time. And if you could have been learning to do that, woe to the person. I feel the pain of that person, what's going to happen to them. Because if they went out and they didn't have an obligation and they're really wasting their time when they could have been learning, God does not look the other way. The Jerusalem Talmud states clear, God can overlook the big three, idolatry, immorality, and murder. God can look the other way if a Jew does that, God forbid, even though these are things you have to give up your life for rather than die. But what does the Jerusalem Talmud tell me? Jerusalem Talmud tells me if a person had the opportunity to learn and they don't, God doesn't look the other way. God's going to punish you severely. More than severely. So if that's the case, you better shape up. All of us better shape up. It's good preparation for Elul. Right? If we had an opportunity to learn and we did it, you better be on your hands and knees begging for forgiveness. And you better make a plan how you're not going to do it again, because that's not something God looks the other way for. Now, what's more important? I shouldn't be doing that. I should be picketing City Hall. That's what I should be doing. Do me a favor. Open up your Gemara. Open up your Musar Sefer. Learn a little bit about ethics. Learn about what you have to do, whether there's a JIT, a Jew in training, whether it's a non-Jew, a Noahide, whatever you want to be called. Do what you need to do to bring the Gula Shlem, right? To bring the ultimate redemption. That's what we want. That's what, that's going to be the end of days. We're holding right now. Just a matter of when. So I got to get involved in politics. I can tell you, my Rebbe, and I spoke to him once, and I was very much into politics years ago. And, they had all these bus bombings here, God forbid, saying about this and about that and the other thing. And he looked at me and he's like, why are you wasting your time here? Are you happy 95% of the way God runs the world? So I was like, yeah, I guess so. He goes, the other 5% you're not going to understand in 10 lifetimes. Move on. Your goal and what you're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be learning. Don't get distracted. This is a distraction. Politics seems like fun, right? A lot of people like to speak about politics. They like to speak about sports. They like to speak about entertainment. Things that don't matter a lick. They don't matter a lick. Because at the end of the day, whatever it's going to be, Leib Malachim biyad Hashem. All right. King Solomon says in Proverbs, the hearts of the kings are in the hands of gods. So God's turning the screws. Doesn't matter who's in power. Someone's better, sometimes worse, right? They're both bad. The question is who's going to be worse, right? So you're voting for someone that hopefully is not going to be as bad. Okay. So even if that's true, what in the world does it make a difference over here? What does it make a difference? I'm going to sit there and waste my time speaking about it. Okay, elections come up, person has to go vote, fine. They go vote. Whatever the case is, you go vote, you go back to what you're doing. You go back to learning, or when you have free time, you go vote and whatever. These things are irrelevant to our lives in general. You're going to say my vote can matter. Okay, how much does the person have to talk about it? How much, we're going to give our political spins and we're going to say like this. Well, who cares? Nobody cares what I think about it. We care what anyone else thinks about it. Whatever their spin is, it doesn't matter because it could change. They could change. They could change their mind tomorrow. They can change their mind the next day. It doesn't matter. It's all irrelevant. It's all part of the evil inclination, right? That's how we sort of got on to this. It's all part of the evil inclination. Because the evil inclination wants you to get all riled up, wants you to get all excited. Oh, what's going on? There were these terrorist attacks and this. Okay, got to be careful. We're going to pay attention to what's around us, different things. I get it. But you know what? I should be more upset. I don't understand what Rashi said in this week's parsha, right? Or I don't understand this piece of Talmud, or I don't understand, what this medrash means, or whatever. That should bother a person. What's going on politically? It doesn't matter. Realistically, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Again, my Rebbe, I've heard other people say this as well, but he really hammered it into me. And he said, all this doesn't matter. What wasted energy, wasted brain power. You got an opportunity to go through Shas. You got an opportunity to go through the entire Talmud, learn, be something. Don't be a political monger. Don't waste your time with this, with this foolishness. What do you need it for? It's good conversation. Forget about conversation. Conversations, Rashi, the Rashba, the Ritva, right? The commentators, what the Gemara says, what this one says. That, what am I learning? Am I changing? How am I preparing for Elul? Different things. That's important. That's crucial. This other stuff, waste of time. Comes on the Ramchal. Says the Ramchal, path of the just. What are we in this world for? We're in this world to struggle. Right? And the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, what happens? What happens? We get distracted. God understands he made a distracting world. Very good. But I shouldn't be distracted. What's the most important thing? My learning's the most important thing. Even for a woman, she has to learn. She has to know what she needs to do. Right? I'm not saying she has the same obligation as a man. She also has to learn. She also has to work on bad character traits. Also has to prepare for El, in different ways. Right? No one's immune over here. But, a lot of things go on. And a lot of things are interesting. And people want to read different things and different spin. At the end of the day, doesn't matter. Totally doesn't matter. Right? Take someone, a very good political commentator, this and that. He mentioned something about Judaism. I'm not going to take what he takes seriously. Whatever he says, I'm not going to take what he says seriously. Okay, person might wear, a yarmulke on his head, might identify with being an Orthodox Jew. Very good. It's politics, one thing. Comes to Judaism, different story altogether. Different story altogether. That shouldn't be our focus. Our focus should be Torah, right? So as we build up, the end of the week's going to be, we're coming into the month of El, right? So it's 40 days of introspection. You got 30 days the month of El, then you got Rosh Hashanah, then you got the 10 days of repentance, and then you got Yom Kippur. It's time to think, where am I? Where am I holding? What's going on? Where was I last year? What do I have to work on? Probably everything, right? Plus, I'm worried about what happened with this, what happened with that. People get carried away with all kinds of things that don't matter. That they don't matter. But it's good conversation talk. Makes good talk radio, which probably all Lashon Hara anyway. Right? So it makes for good topics, good discussions. Very, what's going to be with this, going to be with that. It doesn't really matter. We're not in control. Totally not in control. Right? And what's going to be with the Ukraine? Yeah, we want to get all the Jews out 100%. But God's pulling the strings here. Why does it happen now all of a sudden? Mr. Putin decides he wants to make Russia greater. This is what he does. You think he wants World War III? No, he doesn't want World War III. 100%. He's not interested in that. He wants to conglomerate power. Right? People are going to say, hey, he's going to be the next Hitler. He's going to do this, going to do that. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a lot of different reasons. But God's turning the screws here. Because rationally, it doesn't make sense. All of a sudden now, comes out of the woodwork, decides to do this, right? You can say it was being planned, it was being there, okay, whatever it is. But God's the one pulling the strings here. What's gonna be the end result? People are gonna wake up and see what's going on. Why? He got nuclear weapons. If this happened in Africa, nobody would care. Nobody would care. Doesn't matter whether them kill each other, this, that, they invade, they don't invade, whatever it's gonna be, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Okay, the loss of life, maybe a lot of loss of life. Okay. It's not going to affect anyone in the world. This could affect. They go for more power, this, that, go to Europe. Who knows what's going to be. But that's not even the point. The point is, look what he's got. Look what he's got in his arsenal. He's got a lot in his arsenal. That could, turn the balance over here in different ways. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced it's going to lead to World War III. Could it? In theory. In theory. But I want to give a little bit of a Torah spin here, right? He goes in, God's turning the screws. Could it lead to something more? Could. Could it bring everybody in? Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to get involved, except for China. America want to get involved? I don't think they want to get involved directly. They certainly don't want to get involved. They'll give, help to Ukraine and this and that, but they're not getting directly involved. They don't want to start anything. But everyone's now feeling the pinch. Price going up and all kinds of things. So we'll see where it ends up. We'll see where it definitely ends up. But God's the one pulling the strings. So, remember one thing. If we're happy, at least, for 95% of the time, God, the way he runs the world, the other 5% we're not going to understand in 10 lifetimes. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I could think like this. I could think like that. And this political pundit and that one and the other one and his mother and his dog and his this. Who cares? Who cares? How does it affect my Yirah Shamayim? How does it affect my fear of heaven? How is it going to affect how I pray? Different issue, right? That we have to work on ourselves. These other things relevant. We have to get out of our heads that these things matter at any level. They don't. Essentially, they don't. I have to live my life the way God wants. I have to, do my best, put food on the table, all that. Living in an upside down world, topsy-turvy world. I get it. We're not in control. We're not in control just about anything. So, one regime comes up, another regime goes down, this, that, okay. It's all being prepared for something. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. More than that, on my everyday level, am I learning the way I should? Do I think the way God wants me to think? Do I work the way God wants me to work? These are the important questions. These other things are relevant. Yeah, so at least I finished up verse 8. Let me see the other question over here. Someone asked about Neanderthal DNA. Yeah, what about it? Speaking of intermingling, what do I say? I don't know. Again, evolution, a man being this like pseudo ape, if you tell me he's an ape, and he wasn't a human, whatever, man was created in his full form. So you want to tell me he got knowledge more, he had less knowledge before, more knowledge now, different things, if you tell me he's an animal, so fine. If you tell me he's a human, more problematic, or I would say less problematic. If he's a human, okay, so it's on a lower level. It's on a lower level. Does that mean even if Neanderthal man, does that mean he didn't have a soul? He had a soul. Everyone's got a soul. Every human, right? Every human's got a soul. If he's an animal and it's shown that he's an animal, then a different story. That would be a different story. Yeah. Any other questions or general questions? Someone has heard the Pashtun. Yeah. Someone here mentioned that some hold they're one of the lost tribes. They could be one of the lost tribes. There is a case. I've heard people discuss it a little bit, saying that they could be one of the lost tribes. I don't know. Some people swear by it, even though they're devout Muslims, right? So technically we hold that Islam is not it's not idolatry, even though some say it is. Most rabbinic authorities hold it's not, but anyway, it's forbidden to be a Muslim for the sole reason that it's like making a new religion, right? So even for a Noahide, right? If it's a false religion, then you can't be a Muslim. That's called making up a new religion. So it could be they have similar customs to Jews. Could they be one of the lost tribes? I don't know. Maybe. There's a difference of opinion that the Gemara brings whether the lost tribes are going to come back or not. Some say they will, some say not. Some say they're living in a certain place. We don't even know where they are. But they're living in a certain place, living on a different plane than we are. Totally different plane. Right? They're living in a much higher level and whatever than we could ever imagine. So we don't know who they are, where they are, if they're coming back. Could it be that they are? Could be. I haven't done enough research on it, but I've heard people swear by it and say that they very well could be. They have certain, a lot of things in common, but I would say the verdict is out. Yeah. Any other questions? Can a Noahide repent on Yom Kippur? Yeah. A Noahide, if they've done something wrong, could be a number of things they've done wrong, potentially done wrong, they're liable for death penalty. So they definitely need repentance. And there is repentance by Noahide. Can a Noahide repent on Yom Kippur? Yeah. They certainly can. Even though, it's really David Atonement for Jews, but certainly they can repent. Certainly no question. Somebody asks which verse in Psalms is used to cause when one account is paranormal or supernatural. That I can't answer. That I don't know. Maybe I'll look into it. That I'm not sure what to say. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop there. I just every Sunday, 9:00 Eastern time, 4:00 Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICOFFMAN@gmail.com, which I'm in a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, depending where you are, or almost end of the day for me.